The official story is straightforward. On August 16th, 1977, Elvis Presley died at his Graceland home. The cause was a heart attack. He was 42 years old. The world mourned. But almost immediately, the story began to fray at the edges. Small inconsistencies. Weird coincidences. Things that just didn't add up. His middle name, Aaron, was misspelled as Aaron on his tombstone. Why would his own family get that wrong? His life insurance policy with Lloyd's of London was never cashed. His father, Vernon Presley, refused to release the official autopsy report for 50 years, sealing it until 2027. Then there were the sightings. A man looking just like him buying a one-way ticket to Buenos Aires hours after his death was announced. A black helicopter landing at Graceland and taking off with a mysterious container. It all feeds a central question. A question that has lingered for decades, refusing to die. What if the most famous man in the world decided he didn't want to be famous anymore? What if he pulled off the greatest vanishing act in history? The story isn't just about whether Elvis is alive. It's about why we might want him to be. It's about a world that wasn't ready to let go of its king. Number 18 was Elvis cryogenically frozen. Could Elvis be waiting on ice for a future cure? This theory sounds like science fiction, but it has roots in the 1970s. The cryonics movement was gaining steam. People were seriously considering freezing themselves to be revived later. The first person to be cryogenically preserved was Dr. James Bedford in 1967. The idea was in the air. Elvis, with his immense wealth and fear of aging and illness, would have been a prime candidate. The theory goes like this. The body in the casket was not Elvis. It was a wax dummy. Or it was a body double. The real Elvis was secretly transported to a cryopreservation facility, where proponents point to the strange circumstances of the funeral. The casket itself was a 900-pound copper-lined model. It was kept at a very low temperature. Some mourners who saw the body said it looked waxy, almost fake. His sideburns seemed off. His nose looked different. One of Elvis's backing singers, Kathy Westmoreland, claimed the body in the coffin didn't look like him. She said the hands were smooth, not callous like a guitar player's. Of course, grief and shock can play tricks on your memory. But the observations stuck. There was also the sheer weight of the coffin. It required a significant number of pallbearers. Was it just the heavy copper and lining, or was it heavy because it contained refrigeration equipment to keep the body preserved until it could be moved to a permanent facility? The Cryonics Society of California was active at the time. They were one of the few organizations offering such services. There are unverified rumors that a large anonymous donation was made to a cryonics facility around the time of Elvis's death. Could Vernon Presley have arranged it? He was a man fiercely protective of his son. If there was even a small chance to save Elvis, maybe he would have taken it. It would also explain why he sealed the autopsy report. If the real body wasn't examined, you couldn't have a real autopsy. But the logistics are staggering. How do you move the body of the most famous person on the planet without anyone knowing? How do you get a cryonics team into Graceland unnoticed? And the technology in 1977 was still experimental. The chances of a successful revival, even with today's technology, are basically zero. The freezing process causes massive damage to cells. It was a long shot, a desperate hope. Still, the idea persists. It offers a kind of immortality that fits a legend like Elvis. He isn't dead, he's just waiting for science to catch up. He didn't abandon his fans. He's planning a comeback of epic proportions. What if the sealed autopsy report contains details not about a death, but about a preservation procedure? Could the Presley estate be hiding the world's biggest medical secret? And if he were to be revived, what would he even be revived into? Number 17, did he join a secret society that faked his death? What if Elvis had help? Not just from his inner circle, but from an organization with the power and resources to make someone disappear. This theory suggests Elvis was part of a secret society, like the Freemasons or the Illuminati, that staged his death. These groups are rumored to have influence in government, media, and law enforcement. They could easily create a new identity, forge documents, and silence anyone who got too close to the truth. Elvis had a deep interest in spirituality and esoteric knowledge. He read hundreds of books on religion, numerology, and the occult. He wore jewelry with various spiritual symbols. One of his favorite books was The Impersonal Life. He was searching for something beyond fame and fortune. This spiritual quest could have led him to a secret group that offered him an escape. The theory suggests this wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a carefully planned operation. The society would have prepared a new life for him long in advance. They would have used a body double for the funeral. They would have managed the media narrative. They would have ensured that all the official records supported the story of his death. The misspelling on the tombstone, Aaron, could have been a coded message, a deliberate mistake known only to initiates. Some researchers point to his connection to the Fraternal Order of Eagles, a group he joined in 1970. While it's a public organization, theorists believe it could have been a gateway to more secretive circles. Or they look at his connections in law enforcement. Elvis collected police badges and was friends with sheriffs and federal agents. Could these connections have been used to create a new identity for him, one that would be protected at the highest levels? The motive for the society would be to protect one of its most valuable members from the crushing pressures of fame. Elvis was physically and mentally exhausted. His health was failing. By faking his death, the society could save him. In return, he could continue to serve the society in some other capacity, away from the public eye. This theory explains how such a massive conspiracy could be kept secret for so long. A powerful, disciplined organization would be much better at maintaining secrecy than a small group of family and friends. Any leaks could be quickly contained. Anyone who tried to expose the truth could be discredited or silenced. But there is no hard evidence of Elvis being a member of a powerful secret society. His spiritual interests seem to have been a personal, somewhat scattered journey. He jumped from one belief system to another. This doesn't sound like someone following the strict doctrines of a secret order. And while these societies are powerful, staging the death of Elvis Presley would be a monumental risk. What if his book collection contains hidden codes or messages about his involvement with such a group? Could his charitable donations have been payments to the society for their services? And is it possible that this organization is still protecting him today, ensuring he lives out his life in total anonymity? Number 16, was he a victim of a karate chop? This is one of the more unusual theories. It claims Elvis wasn't a victim of drugs or a bad heart. He was killed by a karate chop. Elvis was a passionate student of martial arts. He earned an 8th degree black belt in Kempo karate. He loved demonstrating his skills, often incorporating karate moves into his stage performances. He surrounded himself with martial arts experts, many of whom served as his bodyguards. The theory suggests that in his final hours, he got into an argument or a sparring match that went wrong. A single, perfectly placed strike to the chest or neck could, in theory, trigger a cardiac event, especially in someone whose health was already fragile. This is known as commotio cordis, a rare but real phenomenon where a blow to the chest disrupts the heart's rhythm. Who would have delivered the blow? The theory doesn't name a specific person. It could have been an accidental strike from a friend during a friendly match. Or it could have been something more sinister, perhaps an argument with one of his bodyguards turned physical. The Memphis Mafia, his inner circle, was known for its internal rivalries and tensions. The main piece of evidence for this theory is the secrecy around the autopsy. If the cause of death was something as specific and potentially criminal as a fatal blow, it would explain why the family would want to hide it. A drug overdose is tragic. A heart attack is a medical issue. But a death caused by a karate chop opens up a world of legal problems. It could lead to a manslaughter or even a murder investigation. To avoid a scandal that would tarnish Elvis's legacy and implicate his friends, the family, perhaps with the help of Dr. George Nicopolis, Dr. Nick, concocted the story of a simple heart attack. They could have pressured the medical examiner to list the cause of death as cardiac arrhythmia, a general term that could be caused by many things, including a physical blow. But this theory has major holes. No one in the house that night ever reported an argument or a physical fight. The people who were with Elvis in his final hours have been interviewed countless times. Their stories, while sometimes conflicting on minor details, never mention a karate fight. And for a medical examiner to fake an autopsy report to cover up a potential homicide would be a massive risk, both legally and professionally. Still, it's a strange thought. Elvis, the king of rock and roll, a man who seemed larger than life, brought down by the very thing he loved, the martial art that made him feel powerful and disciplined. It's a tragic, ironic end that some find more compelling than a slow decline into drug addiction. What if the initial paramedics noticed bruising on his chest consistent with a blow? Could Dr. Nick, the first doctor on the scene, have deliberately ignored or covered up such evidence? And is it possible that someone in the Memphis Mafia has lived with this secret for over 40 years? Number 15. Did he move to Argentina? Why Argentina? Because that's where many high-ranking Nazis fled after World War II. The theory suggests that the same networks that helped them escape were later used to give new identities to other powerful people who wanted to disappear. It's a strange connection, but it forms the basis of this theory. Elvis, with his German heritage, would have supposedly been able to blend in. The story goes that on the night of August 16, 1977, a man who looked a lot like Elvis bought a one-way ticket to Buenos Aires. The ticket was purchased with cash. The man seemed to be in a hurry. This sighting, though unconfirmed, is the cornerstone of the theory. From there, the story builds. Elvis, now living under a new name, settled down in a quiet part of Argentina, far from the prying eyes of the media. Proponents of this theory suggest that Elvis was fascinated by the stories of people who had successfully vanished. He had the money and the connections to hire the best people to create a new life for him. These could be the same shadowy figures who specialized in helping people disappear for a price. Argentina, with its history of harboring fugitives and its vast remote landscapes, would be the perfect place to hide. There have been occasional sightings of an elderly Elvis in small Argentinian towns. A tourist snaps a photo of a man in a cafe who has a familiar sneer. A local resident talks about a mysterious American recluse who lives in a guarded villa. These stories are always secondhand, impossible to verify, but they fuel the imagination. The theory also ties into Elvis's state of mind. He was tired of being Elvis Presley. He was a prisoner in his own home. Escaping to a country where he wasn't a cultural icon would have been the ultimate freedom. He could walk down the street, sit in a park, and just be a normal person. For a man who hadn't been able to do that since he was a teenager, it would have been an irresistible dream. The counter-arguments are obvious. There is no concrete evidence. The airport sighting could have been anyone. It was the 1970s. Plenty of men had sideburns and wore jumpsuits. And the idea that Elvis would use a network designed for Nazi war criminals is a stretch, to say the least. And Elvis was known for his patriotism and even met with President Nixon to offer his help in the war on drugs. It seems out of character, but the image is powerful. Elvis, sipping mate in a sun-drenched courtyard, finally at peace. It's a romantic ending, a kind of retirement that he could never have had in the United States. He didn't die tragically, he escaped. Could his German roots have given him access to a network that few knew existed? Did any of his vast fortunes secretly get transferred to South American banks in the months before his death? And is it possible that somewhere in a dusty town in the Andes, an old man with a familiar voice occasionally sings a few bars of Love Me Tender to himself? Number 14, is he a homeless man named Jesse? This theory is both sad and hopeful. It suggests that Elvis didn't just escape fame, he escaped his entire identity. He walked away from everything and chose to live a simple, anonymous life on the streets. He adopted the name of his stillborn twin brother, Jesse Garon Presley. It would be a way to honor his brother and to shed the skin of Elvis Aaron Presley. The theory is based on a few grainy photos and videos of a homeless man who bears a striking resemblance to an older Elvis. This man, who calls himself Jesse, has been seen in various cities across the United States. He has the same facial structure, the same eyes, and a similar build. In some videos, he speaks with a southern accent and talks about his past in vague, cryptic terms. Our proponents believe that the trauma of his fame and the grief over his mother's death never left him. He felt like an imposter, living the life that should have belonged to his brother. By becoming Jesse, he could finally be himself, free from the expectations and pressures of being the king. It was a radical act of self-erasure. This theory ties into the psychological state of Elvis in his final years. He was isolated and lonely, despite being surrounded by people. He was reportedly struggling with his identity. The idea of just walking away with nothing but the clothes on his back might have seemed like the only way out. He wouldn't have to worry about his image, his career, or his fortune. He could just be. Of course, the man in the videos could simply be a convincing lookalike. Or he could be someone who is mentally ill and believes he is Elvis. It's easy to see a resemblance if you're looking for one, and the idea that Elvis would choose a life of poverty and hardship on the streets is hard to believe for many. He was a man who loved comfort and luxury, but the theory has a poetic appeal. It's a story of redemption. Elvis doesn't die a bloated drug addict. Instead, he finds a kind of spiritual purity in poverty. He renounces his worldly possessions and finds peace in anonymity. It's a story that turns a tragic ending into a journey of self-discovery. What if Elvis, in his spiritual readings, came to believe that true enlightenment could only be found by abandoning all material wealth? Could he have arranged for his fortune to be left to his family while he embarked on this new life? And is it possible that the real king of rock and roll is out there, sleeping on a park bench, completely at peace with the world? Number 13. Was he silenced by the government? This theory takes a dark turn. It suggests that Elvis didn't fake his death. He was murdered, and the people who killed him were agents of the US government. Why? Because he knew too much. This theory paints Elvis not as a cultural icon, but as a man who had become entangled in the shady world of politics and organized crime. The central piece of evidence is his famous meeting with President Richard Nixon on December 21st, 1970. And Elvis wrote a letter to Nixon offering his services to help fight the war on drugs. He wanted to be a federal agent at large. Nixon met with him and gave him an honorary badge from the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. On the surface, it was a quirky photo op. But what if it was more than that? The theory suggests that Elvis took his new role seriously. He used his unique position to gather information. He traveled in circles that included powerful celebrities, mobsters, and politicians. He might have overheard conversations or seen things he wasn't supposed to see. Perhaps he learned about government corruption, CIA operations, or mafia connections to high-ranking officials. According to this theory, Elvis became a liability. He was unpredictable, he had a drug problem of his own, which made him a security risk. If he decided to go public with what he knew, he could bring down powerful people. So, a decision was made to eliminate him. His death would be made to look like a drug-related heart attack, something everyone would believe given his lifestyle. This would explain the rush to declare his death a result of natural causes. It would explain why the autopsy was sealed. It would explain why some members of his inner circle were so quick to accept the official story. They might have been threatened or paid off. The theory is fueled by the general paranoia of the 1970s. The Watergate scandal had just happened. People were questioning the integrity of the government. The idea that federal agents could murder a celebrity wasn't as far-fetched as it might seem today. But there is no direct evidence to support this claim. No whistleblower has ever come forward. No documents have ever been leaked. Elvis's interest in being a federal agent seemed more like a fantasy, a desire to be a real-life superhero, than a serious attempt at espionage. He wanted the badge and the authority, but it's unlikely he was conducting covert operations. Still, the image of Elvis as a tragic hero, a man who tried to do the right thing and was silenced for it, is a powerful one. It recasts him from a victim of his own excess to a martyr who died for his country. What if the letter he wrote to Nixon contained coded information, signaling that he had important intelligence to share? Could his collection of law enforcement badges have been more than a hobby, but a network of contacts providing him with sensitive information? And what secrets might be hidden in the still classified files from the Nixon administration? Number 12. Was he actually his stillborn twin, Jesse Garon? This is perhaps the most mind-bending theory of all. It flips the entire Elvis story on its head. The official story is that Elvis was born on January 8th, 1935, and his identical twin brother, Jesse Garon Presley, was stillborn. This Elvis grew up as a lone child, always feeling the absence of his brother. But what if the story is the other way around? The theory proposes that Elvis Aaron was the one who was stillborn. The baby who survived was Jesse Garon. But his parents, Vernon and Gladys, were so devastated by the loss of the baby they had already named Elvis that they decided to give that name to their surviving son. So the man we know as Elvis Presley was in fact Jesse Presley his entire life. Why would this matter? According to the theory, it created a deep-seated identity crisis in him. He was living under his dead brother's name. He felt like he was a substitute, an imposter. This could explain his lifelong feelings of loneliness and his search for spiritual meaning. It could also explain his obsession with his own identity and his eventual desire to escape it. The evidence for this theory is purely psychological. It's an attempt to explain the complex and often contradictory personality of Elvis. It also plays into the strange decision to misspell his middle name as Aaron on his grave. The theory suggests this was a final symbolic act. Elvis Aaron, the baby who died, was finally being laid to rest. And Jesse Garon, the man who had lived as Elvis, was now free to walk away. This theory makes the idea of him faking his death even more plausible. If he had never felt like he was truly Elvis Presley, it would be much easier to shed that identity. He wasn't killing off himself. He was killing off a character he had been playing his whole life. He could finally become Jesse again, the person he was always meant to be. There is, of course, no way to prove or disprove this. The birth records from rural Mississippi in 1935 might not be perfectly detailed, and the people who would know the truth, his parents, are long gone. It remains a fascinating piece of psychological speculation. It changes the way you see his entire life. Every song about loneliness, every moment of self-doubt takes on a new meaning. He wasn't just a star struggling with fame, he was a man struggling with his own existence. Could Gladys Presley have confessed this secret to Elvis on her deathbed, triggering his downward spiral in the years that followed? Was the name change on the tombstone a deliberate instruction left by Elvis in his will? And if he did walk away, did he finally introduce himself to people as Jesse? Number 11. Did he appear as an extra in Home Alone? This theory brings the Elvis mystery into the modern era. It's one of the most famous and persistent sightings of all time. The theory claims that Elvis Presley made a cameo appearance as an extra in the 1990 movie, Home Alone. The scene in question takes place at an airport. Catherine O'Hara's character is frantically trying to book a flight home. She's arguing with an airline employee. Standing in the line behind her is a man with a beard, a turtleneck, and a sports coat. This man bears a striking resemblance to Elvis. He has the same facial structure, the same eyes, and he even moves his head in a way that fans say is classic Elvis. The theory took off in the early days of the internet. People created websites dedicated to analyzing the scene. They posted side-by-side comparisons of the extra and photos of Elvis. They slowed down the footage and zoomed in on the man's face. To believers, the evidence is undeniable. It's him. He would have been 55 years old in 1990, which fits the age of the man in the film. Why would Elvis appear as an extra in a family comedy? The theory suggests it was a deliberate clue, a wink to his fans. He was letting them know that he was still around, living a normal life. He was hiding in plain sight. What better place to hide than in the background of a busy movie scene? The director of Home Alone, Chris Columbus, has addressed the theory. He has stated that the man is not Elvis Presley. He said he has no idea who the extra is, but he's certain it's not the king of rock and roll. He even joked that if Elvis was on his set, he would have known, but the believers are not convinced. They say Columbus is either lying to protect Elvis's privacy or he simply didn't know. Extras are often hired in large groups. It's possible that Elvis just slipped in, did his scene, and slipped out without anyone recognizing him. The theory is a testament to the power of suggestion. Once someone points out the resemblance, it's hard to unsee it. The man does look a lot like how you might imagine an older Elvis would look. And it's a fun, harmless theory that connects Elvis to a beloved piece of pop culture. It keeps the legend alive in a playful way. Could a Hollywood director be part of a conspiracy to protect Elvis's secret identity? Is it possible that the film's records for extras on that day have been deliberately lost or altered? And if it was him, was he trying to send a message, and did we miss its true meaning? Number 10 is he a pastor named Bob Joyce. This is a more recent theory, one that has gained a lot of traction on platforms like YouTube. It centers on a man named Bob Joyce, a pastor and singer from Benton, Arkansas. The theory claims that Bob Joyce is actually Elvis Presley, living a quiet life dedicated to God. The evidence is primarily based on video recordings of Joyce preaching and singing. His voice is remarkably similar to Elvis's. It has the same deep, rich tone and the same southern accent. When he sings gospel songs, the resemblance is uncanny. He also looks a lot like an older Elvis. He has the same facial features, the same hairline, and even some of the same mannerisms. Proponents of the theory have created countless compilation videos comparing Joyce's voice to Elvis's. They've analyzed his facial features, claiming they are a perfect match. They also point to his life story. Joyce is a very private person. Not much is known about his past before he became a pastor. Theorists believe this is because he has no past to share, other than the one he left behind as Elvis. The theory suggests that Elvis, after faking his death, turned to religion. This would make sense given his lifelong interest in spirituality and gospel music. He found peace and redemption by dedicating his life to God. He chose a small town in Arkansas where he could live in anonymity, using his famous voice to praise the Lord instead of to entertain screaming fans. Bob Joyce himself has been asked about the theory. He has reportedly denied it, but in a way that believers find vague and unconvincing. He seems to be a humble, gentle man who is uncomfortable with the attention. This, of course, is seen as further proof. He's not denying it forcefully because he can't. The counterargument is that he's simply a very good Elvis impersonator, or just a man who happens to sound and look like him. There are thousands of Elvis tribute artists around the world. Some of them are incredibly convincing. Bob Joyce may just be one of them. But without the jumpsuit and the act, he's just a man who loves gospel music and happens to have a gift. But the emotional pull of the theory is strong. It gives Elvis a happy ending. He didn't die alone. He found a new purpose. He's still sharing his gift with the world, just in a much different way. He's saving souls instead of selling records. Could a man with such a unique and recognizable voice truly hide in plain sight as a small-town pastor? Have any DNA tests ever been conducted to compare Joyce to the Presley family? And what would happen if one Sunday, in the middle of a sermon, he accidentally slipped and performed a hip, swiveling dance move? Number 9, is he a groundskeeper at Graceland? What if Elvis never left home? This theory suggests that Elvis is living out his days working as a groundskeeper at Graceland, his beloved Memphis estate. He's hiding in the one place no one would ever expect to find him. The theory centers on a man with a long gray beard and a ponytail who has been seen working on the Graceland property. The evidence comes from photos and videos taken by tourists visiting Graceland. In some of these images, a man can be seen in the background, tending to the gardens or walking on the grounds. Fans who have studied these images claim the man has Elvis's eyes and his distinctive gait. In one particular video, the man holds up 2 fingers, a gesture that some believe is a peace sign, a signal to his fans that he's okay. The man has been identified by Graceland as Bill Barmer, a longtime employee. But this, of course, is what the conspirators would want you to believe. Bill Barmer is just an alias. It's a cover for the king who wants to stay close to the home he loved so much. The theory has a certain logic to it. If you were Elvis and you wanted to watch over your home and see your fans, what better disguise than that of a humble groundskeeper? No one would look twice at him. He could observe everything without being observed. He could feel the love from his fans without having to endure the pressures of being Elvis Presley. It would be the ultimate act of hiding in plain sight. He could see his daughter and grandchildren when they visited. He could make sure his home was being properly cared for. He would be a silent guardian of his own legacy. But the man in the photos also looks a lot like a groundskeeper. He's an older man with a beard. Any resemblance to Elvis could be purely coincidental, and for Elvis to take on a life of manual labor, even at his own home, seems unlikely for a man who is used to a life of luxury. Still, the idea is compelling. It's a quiet, gentle ending for a man whose life was so loud and chaotic. He's not a secret agent or a pastor. He's just a man tending his garden, at peace in the place he called home. It's a very human ending to a superhuman story. Has anyone ever tried to have a long conversation with Bill Barmer? What is his background and can it be verified? And if it is Elvis, does he ever sneak into the house at night, sit down at his piano, and play a few quiet songs for himself? Number 8, was he replaced by a double? This theory is a staple of celebrity conspiracies, famously applied to Paul McCartney as well. The idea is that the real Elvis Presley died much earlier, perhaps in the late 1960s or early 1970s. The man who performed in Las Vegas, the jumpsuit Elvis, was a replacement, a double hired by the Colonel Tom Parker and the Presley estate to keep the money machine running. The theory points to the dramatic change in Elvis's appearance and behavior in the 1970s. He gained a significant amount of weight. His voice, some say, changed in tone and quality. His personality became more erratic. Was this just the result of aging and drug use? Or was it because he was a different person entirely? Believers analyzed photos from the 1960s and 1970s, claiming to find subtle differences in facial features. The shape of the nose, the curve of the earlobes, the distance between the eyes. They argue that these things don't change, even with weight gain. They also point to his stage performances. The raw energy of the early Elvis was replaced by a more theatrical, almost parodied version of himself. Was the double not as talented as the original? The motive would be purely financial. Elvis was a massive industry. His death would have been a financial catastrophe for many people, especially his manager, Colonel Parker. By hiring a convincing double, They could keep the concerts, the record sales, and the merchandise going for years. This theory explains the tragic decline of the 1970s in a new light. The man on stage wasn't the real Elvis struggling with addiction. He was an imposter, struggling to live up to an impossible role. The eventual death in 1977 was simply the end of the contract. The double was no longer needed, so the character of Elvis Presley was officially retired. But the evidence is highly subjective. People's appearances do change dramatically with weight gain and age. And the stress of his fame and his prescription drug abuse would easily explain the changes in his personality and performance style. Furthermore, the idea of finding a double who could sing and move so convincingly like Elvis and keeping him a secret from his closest friends and family seems impossible. It's a chilling thought, though, that the man the world mourned in 1977 wasn't the real king. The real Elvis had been gone for years, his fate unknown. The final years of his career were nothing but a long, elaborate fraud. What if the change in his handwriting, noted by experts over the years, wasn't just a stylistic drift, but proof of two different people? Could his own daughter, Lisa Marie, have been deceived by a double for years? And if the real Elvis died earlier, what was his true cause of death? Number 7, did he go into the witness protection program? This is one of the most popular and detailed theories. It suggests that Elvis faked his death with the help of the FBI to enter the witness protection program. Why? Because he was about to testify against a dangerous criminal organization known as the Fraternity. This theory was popularized by the author Gail Brewer Giorgio in her 1988 book, Is Elvis Alive? She claimed to have evidence that Elvis was an undercover informant for the government. He had become involved with a financial group called the Fraternity, which was essentially a front for the mafia. Elvis had invested money with them, but he soon discovered their illegal activities, which included racketeering and money laundering. Fearing for his life and the lives of his family, Elvis went to the FBI. He agreed to help them build a case against the Fraternity in exchange for a new identity. The FBI, realizing the value of their star witness, agreed. They helped him stage his death. The heart attack was a cover story. The body in the coffin was a double. The theory points to several pieces of evidence. First, Elvis had a deep respect for law enforcement and a strong sense of patriotism. It would have been in his character to help the government take down a criminal organization. Second, there are FBI documents obtained through the Freedom of Information Act that show the government did have a file on Elvis. While many of the pages are blacked out, they show that he was in contact with the FBI. The theory also explains the strange behavior of his father, Vernon, after his death. He seemed oddly calm and in control. Was it because he knew his son was safe? And the sealed autopsy report? It would need to be sealed to protect the secret of his new identity. But the FBI has publicly stated that Elvis was never an informant and never entered the witness protection program. The documents in his file are mostly related to death threats against him and his own offer to help Nixon. And the idea that Elvis could be successfully hidden in the witness protection program is a huge stretch. He was arguably the most recognizable person in the world. It would be nearly impossible to give him a new face and a new life without someone recognizing him. Still, the theory has a powerful appeal. It turns Elvis into a hero. He didn't succumb to his demons. He risked his life to do the right thing. He gave up everything he had to protect his family and his country. It's a story worthy of a Hollywood movie. Could the heavily redacted sections of his FBI file contain details of his undercover work? Did any members of the so-called fraternity receive unusually light sentences after 1977, suggesting a deal had been made? And if Elvis is out there with a new identity, does he ever get the urge to walk into a karaoke bar and show everyone how it's done? Number 6, was he a secret federal agent? This theory is a variation of the witness protection story, but with a twist. It suggests that Elvis wasn't just a one-time informant, he was an active undercover federal agent for years. His meeting with Richard Nixon wasn't a one-off event, it was his official induction into a secret world of espionage. The theory proposes that Elvis's celebrity was the perfect cover. He could travel the world without suspicion. He could gain access to powerful and dangerous people. No one would suspect that the king of rock and roll was actually gathering intelligence for the US government. His concerts were just a front for his real work. Proponents of this theory look at his entourage, the Memphis Mafia. They weren't just friends and hangers-on, they were his team of operatives. They provided security and logistical support for his missions. His interest in guns and law enforcement wasn't a hobby. It was part of his training. The theory suggests that by 1977, his cover was blown. An enemy organization, perhaps the KGB or a powerful drug cartel, had discovered his true identity. He was now a target. The only way to save him was to make him die. His faked death was an extraction, an operation planned and executed by his handlers in the government. This would explain the military-style precision of the death, the black helicopter at Graceland, the quick embalming of the body, the sealed records. It was all part of a standard government protocol for protecting a compromised agent. The evidence is, of course, circumstantial. It's based on reinterpreting the known facts of his life through a spy thriller lens. The letter to Nixon is seen as a formal application. His international tours are seen as intelligence-gathering trips. His drug use is seen as a cover, a way to make him seem unstable and non-threatening. The main problem with the theory is its sheer improbability. Elvis was one of the most photographed and documented people of his time. It's hard to believe he could have been leading a double life as a secret agent without someone noticing. And his prescription drug abuse was very real, well documented by his doctors and friends. It's not something you could easily fake, but it's a thrilling narrative. Elvis as James Bond. It makes his life even more extraordinary than it already was. He wasn't just a singer. He was a patriot, serving his country in secret. His death wasn't a tragedy. It was a final, heroic act of disappearing to protect national security. What if his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, who had his own mysterious past and ties to the military, was actually his government handler? Could the lyrics to some of his later songs contain coded messages about his secret work? And is it possible that he spent his retirement training a new generation of celebrity spies? Number 5, did he go on a spiritual journey? What if Elvis's escape wasn't about running from something, but running to something? This theory suggests that he faked his death to pursue a spiritual journey, to finally find the answers he had been searching for his entire life. He didn't go into hiding, he went on a pilgrimage. Elvis's fascination with spirituality is well documented. He had a library of hundreds of books on religion, philosophy, and mysticism. He studied the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, and the Book of Mormon. He was interested in numerology, astrology, and the teachings of gurus like Paramahansa Yogananda. He was a man on a quest for meaning. The theory proposes that by 1977, he realized he could never find true enlightenment while living the life of Elvis Presley. His fame, his wealth, his entourage, they were all distractions. He needed to shed his worldly identity to find his true self. So he walked away from it all. Where did he go? Some versions of the theory have him living in a monastery in Tibet or an ashram in India. Others suggest he joined a remote spiritual community in the American desert. The location doesn't matter as much as the purpose. He was dedicating his life to prayer, meditation, and study, free from the temptations of his old life. This theory explains the sighting of a man resembling Elvis in Kalamazoo, Michigan, shortly after his death. The man was reportedly seen reading a book about the Shroud of Turin. It also explains his state of mind in his final years. He was becoming more withdrawn and philosophical. He often gave long rambling monologues on stage about life, death, and God. Was he preparing his fans for his departure? This theory offers a more noble and peaceful end for Elvis. He didn't die of a drug overdose, he transcended his earthly existence. He chose a life of the mind and the spirit over a life of material excess. He achieved a kind of immortality not through his music, but through his spiritual awakening. The counter-argument is that while Elvis was a spiritual seeker, he was also a man who loved earthly pleasures. He loved cars, food, women, and the adoration of his fans. It's hard to imagine him giving all of that up for a simple life of asceticism. His spiritual journey was often chaotic and contradictory, jumping from one belief to another. It lacked the discipline required for a true spiritual pilgrimage, but the idea of Elvis as a monk is a powerful one. It suggests that even the biggest star in the world can find peace in a simple contemplative life. It's a story of ultimate transformation. Could his final will and testament contain instructions for his spiritual followers? Did he leave behind a secret manuscript or journal detailing his philosophical beliefs? And is it possible that somewhere in a remote mountain monastery, a wise old monk with a familiar baritone voice leads the morning chants? Or number 4, did he go into a bunker under Graceland? What if he never left the property? This theory is a twist on the idea that he's a groundskeeper. It suggests that Elvis retreated into a secret, state-of-the-art bunker built underneath Graceland. From this command center, he could live in complete safety and privacy, while still being at the heart of his own world. The theory is based on the fact that Elvis was obsessed with security. Graceland had walls, gates, and 24-hour guards. But for a man as famous as him, that might not have been enough. He was also known to be a bit of a homebody. What if he built the ultimate panic room, a place where he could escape from the world entirely? The bunker would have everything he needed: a living quarters, a kitchen, a movie theater, a recording studio. It would have its own air and water supply. It could be a self-sufficient world, a miniature Graceland beneath Graceland. From there, he could monitor the goings-on at his home through secret cameras. He could even secretly manage his own estate. Proponents of this theory point to construction work that was done at Graceland in the years before his death. Was it just a renovation, or were they building something more? They also point to the high-tech security systems he had installed. Were they just for the main house, or were they for something underground? This theory explains how he could have disappeared so completely. He didn't need a new identity or a new country, he just needed a new room. His closest confidants could bring him food and supplies. He could live out his life in peace, just a few feet beneath the feet of the tourists visiting his home. The main problem with this theory is the lack of any physical evidence. No blueprints for a bunker have ever been found. No construction worker has ever come forward to say they built it. And the idea of living underground for decades, completely cut off from the outside world, seems like a lonely and depressing existence, even for a recluse. But it has a certain sci-fi appeal. Elvis as a benevolent phantom haunting his own home. It also fits with his love of technology and gadgets. The bunker would be his ultimate toy, his private fortress. Are there parts of the Graceland estate that are still off limits to the public, and even to most staff? Could the high utility bills at Graceland be explained by a secret underground dwelling? And does he ever use a secret passage to come up into the jungle room at night and sit in his favorite chair? Number 3, was he abducted by aliens? This is where the theories leave the realm of the plausible and enter the world of the fantastic. But for some, it's the only explanation that makes sense. The theory suggests that Elvis Presley didn't die, and he didn't fake his death. He was taken by aliens. Why would aliens be interested in Elvis? The theory has several branches. One suggests that Elvis himself was an alien, a star child sent to Earth to change the world with his music. His death in 1977 was simply him returning to his home planet. His mission was complete. This would explain his almost superhuman charisma and talent. Another version suggests that the aliens were simply fans. They recognized his cultural importance and decided to collect him, to preserve him for eternity in their intergalactic museum. They abducted him from Graceland, leaving behind a clone or a dummy to fool the world. The evidence for this theory is based on Elvis's own reported UFO sightings. He claimed to have seen strange lights in the sky on several occasions, including on the day he was born. His father, Vernon, also reported seeing a strange blue light above their home in Tupelo on the night of Elvis's birth. And Elvis incorporated some of these cosmic themes into his later costumes with their elaborate celestial designs. This theory is, of course, impossible to prove. It's based entirely on belief and speculation. There are no crashed spaceships at Graceland, no alien artifacts in his collection. It's a theory that exists purely in the realm of faith, but it provides a grand, cosmic ending for a man who was larger than life. He didn't just die, he ascended to the stars. He became a legend on a galactic scale. It's the most Elvis ending imaginable, full of spectacle and mystery. Could his interest in spirituality have been a way of trying to understand his own extraterrestrial origins? Were his famous jumpsuits not just costumes, but a form of alien ceremonial garb? And is it possible that somewhere in another galaxy, a concert is being held, and the headline act is Elvis Presley? Number 2, was it all a hoax? He planned himself? This is the master theory, the one that ties all the others together. It suggests that Elvis didn't just fake his death. He orchestrated the entire conspiracy that followed. He was the puppet master, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. The clues, the sightings, the mysterious circumstances, they were all part of his grand design. The theory goes that Elvis was a genius, not just as a musician, but as a showman. He understood the power of myth and legend. He knew that by dying young and mysteriously, he would become immortal. His legacy would be debated and analyzed for centuries. It was the greatest performance of his life. He planned it for years. He studied cases of people who had successfully disappeared. He created a network of loyal friends who would help him. He deliberately planted clues: the misspelled name on the grave, the uncashed life insurance policy, the sealed autopsy. He knew these details would fuel speculation for decades. The sightings weren't accidental. They were deliberate appearances, carefully staged to keep the story alive. The Home Alone extra, the man at the airport, the groundskeeper at Graceland, it was all him, playing different roles in his own mystery play. He was having fun with his audience, leading them on a wild goose chase. Why would he do it? For the ultimate freedom, the freedom to live a normal life, and for the ultimate artistic statement. He turned his own life and death into a work of art, a puzzle for the world to solve. He was tired of being a product. He wanted to be the creator. This theory reframes everything. He wasn't a victim of fame. He was its master. He wasn't a drug addict who lost control. He was an artist who was in complete control of his own narrative. The evidence for this is the conspiracy itself. The fact that the story has endured for so long, with so many strange twists and turns, is seen as proof that it was designed by a master storyteller. It's too complex, too perfect to be an accident, but it also requires you to believe that Elvis was a cold, calculating manipulator. That he would put his own family, his daughter, and his fans through the pain of his death just for his own amusement or artistic ambition. For many, that's a step too far. It goes against the image of Elvis as a generous, warm-hearted man. What if the books and documentaries that promote the conspiracy are secretly funded by Elvis himself? Could the many Elvis impersonators be part of a network he created to confuse the public and provide cover for his own appearances? And if his death was his final masterpiece, what will be his encore? Number 1, did he just want to go home? Perhaps the simplest theory is the most powerful. It strips away all the conspiracies, the spies, the aliens, and the secret societies. It suggests that Elvis Presley, the man from Tupelo, Mississippi, was just tired. He was tired of being the king. He was tired of the jumpsuits, the screaming fans, the pills, and the isolation. He just wanted to go home. This theory isn't about a grand plan. It's about a simple human desire for peace and quiet. He faked his death because it was the only way out. He didn't want a new life of adventure. He wanted a normal life, the kind of life he had before he ever cut a record at Sun Studio. The plan would have been simple. With the help of a few loyal friends, he slipped away. He didn't go to Argentina or a bunker. He went to a small town somewhere in the South, bought a small house, and changed his name. He became John Smith or Bob Jones. He got a job at the local hardware store. He went fishing on the weekends. He sat on his porch in the evening and watched the world go by. He would have had to change his appearance, of course, cut his hair, grow a beard, lose some weight. But in a small town where people mind their own business, he could have blended in. He was a master of disguise in his movies. Maybe he used those skills in real life. This theory is compelling because it's so relatable. Everyone at some point has dreamed of just walking away from their life and starting over. Elvis, who lived the most extraordinary life imaginable, might have had that dream more than anyone. This theory doesn't need much evidence. It's based on an understanding of human nature. The evidence is in his eyes, in the photos from his final years. They look tired. The smile doesn't always reach them. He looks like a man who is carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Maybe all the strange clues and coincidences aren't part of a grand conspiracy. Maybe they were just mistakes. A tired, grieving family misspelled a name on a tombstone. A lookalike was on a plane. A groundskeeper looks a bit like him. We see patterns where there are none because we want to believe in a better story. We want to believe that he found peace. This theory gives him that peace. He didn't die a tragic death. He retired. He got the quiet life he could never have. As Elvis Presley, he got to grow old. He got to be a normal person. He finally got to go home. What if the reason no one has ever found him is because no one is looking for a regular old man in a small town? Could he have fallen in love again with someone who had no idea who he used to be? And on quiet nights, does he ever pick up an old guitar and play the songs that made him famous, not for an audience of thousands, but just for himself?